Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Hello and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we're going to talk about a lifelong love affair and broken heart over a plant called cannabis. And I'm going to tell a story that goes all the way back to my preteen or teenage years, and that takes you all the way up to today where I'm 58 years old and in the process of healing myself from squamous cell carcinoma that has come very close to killing me. And the role that cannabis has had in all of this. I've been an advocate for plant medicines for since my 20s, probably the mid 80s. And I've been a pioneer in discovering and extracting and creating medicines, and I've experienced huge miracles. But recently my journey in plant medicine in a quest for the truth has revealed a lot of things that I didn't want to see. And so we're going to talk about some truths, and we're going to learn the history of all of this with me. People want to know sometimes, well, what the heck, what's your thing here? And so I'm going to lay it all out. I've risked my freedom. I've even risked my life over this plant. And in the end, I got a broken heart and was let down in a way that I never imagined. Doesn't make this not an important plant. Doesn't mean it doesn't do good work. But we're going to talk about the truth. So we'll go all the way back. I don't know, I think I was 12, 13 years old. And a couple of my buddies, I think I was 12 the first time. I think I was in junior high. And I was over at my buddy's house. And I remember the first time I ever even knew anything about pot. My buddy comes over and he's like, hey, this guy just harvested a bud and we can smoke it. And I remember he took out, this was when microwaves were new, and he had taken a bud off a fresh plant and they put it in the microwave and dried it out, and I took my first hit. And I have a fairly clear memory of this, and like I said, I don't know, never smoked anything before. I think I had taken a few hits off my dad's tobacco pipe, years and years ago. But I don't know. I didn't feel a whole lot. It was whatever, interesting. I wasn't smitten by it or anything like that. And then a couple of years later, maybe, I don't know, maybe 15. I was probably a freshman in high school, maybe. Same friends. And these are two of my best friends in all of life that we spent. We were Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer and whatever the third guy was. Just my whole childhood was built on these memories with these guys, and they were all great memories. We did all kinds of crazy stuff and just learned and explored and since I was a young kid, I always wanted to discover, and I was always on a quest to learn new things and find out, push myself to the limit. I think a lot of bad choices I've made in life were because I wanted to see if I could. And, I don't know, let's see if I can. And so I've done a lot of stupid shit because I just wanted to see if I could. And I don't know. And I've also discovered a lot of cool things because of that. And if you understand science, the cost of science is many lives. And so I've experimented on myself in many ways, and maybe it's cost me a lot, but the discoveries I have are priceless. So now we go to, I don't know, like I said, I'm in high school, and I remember just barely in high school, and we had this big backyard, we had this barn, and I remember my buddies came over, and down in San Diego, my buddy's grandma had a house down there in Leucadia or Encinitas, somewhere down there. And I guess the guy next door had a pot plant growing, and these guys hopped over the fence and snagged some buds and brought them back. We dried them in my barn, and I got my first batch of pot. And that's where I kind of fell in love with it. I got a chance to smoke more of it, and I was like, hey, I like this. This is pretty nice. Now, remember, I'm a hyper person. I'm a high energy person all my life, and I've had sensory overload. I've probably autistic in some way. Who knows? I don't know, but I don't care. I'm just a high energy guy. So what pot gave me was a release from all that, a place where I didn't have to be so overloaded all the time. And I'm an intense person, and so anybody who knows me knows that. And for a lot of people, it's too much. And so I think this helped me to tone my frequency down where I could talk to different people. And over the years, I enjoyed this plant. I got out of high school, but I did some crazy stuff. My God, in high school and just out of high school, the things I had to do to get pot. Remember, there was this place in Santa Ana, and we used to call it SA, and it was this, not a place the white kid necessarily belongs. And there used to be this house behind a house. It was like a long driveway, a house in the front, house in the back. And you walk up to this place. Now you're in a place where you necessarily don't even belong. And you park up the street, walk down, and you walk all the way back, and you blindly stick $20 in the little slit of this window. And then about a minute later, a little bag comes out. You don't ever see a person, you don't know a thing, you just stick your money in and the pot comes out. And that was great for a while, and I was willing to risk that. And every time I could get $20 together and a little gas, we'd go down and pick up a little sack, and you get a nice, decent sack, whatever that meant. I don't know if we even weighed stuff back then. And it had some seeds in it, but not a lot. And it was pretty stinky, pretty green. It was good, and it wasn't compacted. And so every time we got a chance, we'd go get some SA bud. But one time I went down there, and there was this big old cholo dude standing in the driveway between the two houses, and I walked up, and he's like, "Hey, hold on, this is where you got to go. I got you." And he sort of flashes this little bag, and all right, I don't know what to do. This dude was huge, and I was, a skinny white kid, and I probably weighed about what I do now. And so I handed him the $20. I took the bag, and I walked on out, and I didn't even look at it until I got back to the car. I get in the car, and I open it up, and it was friggin' juniper. It was nothing. It wasn't pot. Like, fuck that. I guess we don't come back here. And at that time, $20 was a lot of money. It still is, but it was a lot of money. It took me a minute to earn $20. I think I was making $3.35 an hour at minimum wage at that time. So that's the stuff we used to do to get pot back then. And then one day, I was over at my friend's house, and this guy comes over, and he brings a joint, and I hit this joint. Holy shit, it knocked me on my ass. Now, I'm the kind of guy that when something impactful happens, I'm like, oh, I need to learn how to do this. And that's what I thought. I don't know who this guy is, but I need to get to know him, and I need to learn what he's doing here. And over time, that happened. And we became dear friends. And he taught me how to grow indoors. And I thought I was growing indoors. I was planting seeds, and I had this stupid, any light I could find in this little room, and I had these little pots, and I had no clue what I was doing. I had no ventilation and nothing. And he comes in and starts guiding me. Oh, well, here's what we need. We need this kind of light. We need some airflow. And we ended up setting up a little indoor in my little garage. And then slowly but surely, he teaches me how to clone. And then he starts teaching me about this genetics that he has and the history of it. And he was a bush grower, and it took time. He didn't trust me right away, but we started working together. I was a painter, he was an electrician, and I'd help him on some jobs. He'd help me on some jobs, and we just got to become friends. For those of you who are listening to this and think that we're friends, but we don't spend any time together, well, we might be friends, but a relationship is built on time spent together and the quality of that time. And so I have realized that, we can have a friendship of sorts or whatever and not spend any time together, but a true friendship, you just spend time together, that's all. So as we spent more time together, eventually he trusted me enough to go out and be a part of one of his bush grows. And so we went out to a place he already had, and he taught me how to grow pot out in the bush. And eventually we discovered our own spots and developed them. And for 20 years or so, we grew pot out in the bush. And at that time, nobody had good pot. Once in a great while, something would come down from Humboldt or whatnot. I had a buddy of mine that went off to college up at Humboldt State. And I remember one time he sent me a tin of buds in a chocolate cookies. And oh my God, that was the best pot I'd ever had, I remember. And then another friend went to Hawaii and sent me a big nug of Hawaiian bud, and oh my God. But that was just few and far between, There was some Colombian gold every once in a while, or Panama red, or, a few little exotic sativa strains would come up once in a while. But for the most part, weed was lousy. And I had good weed. And so once I brought this to the world, and he showed me how to trim it, dry it, cure it. Now, back in the days, we would wet trim. I think they're figuring that out again now, but we used to wet trim, and then after it was dried to a point where we started curing it, we'd finish trimming it, and then we'd jar cure it and burp it, twice a day until the bottom of the stem just barely snapped, and we checked every bud of every jar. I mean, we were meticulous. And after the stuff was cured, then I'd make some available. And I'd always make sure I had my case of jars for myself for the year. And I'd have basically one nice jar a month, and it would generally last me. And whatever I had over that, I'd sell. And over time, I became quite a little local hero. And people would line up, and they paid what would be crazy prices today for this pot. I didn't have ever a whole lot of it, but we get a pound or two extra, and it would help, and people would line up. Sometimes they'd pay me a deposit for next year's crop because it was that good. And they used to call it, all these names and, whatever. It was just like, it was great times. And I had lots of friends, and everybody loved to smoke pot with me, and I thought it was me, but come to find out later on it was the pot. And you come to learn these lessons over time. And then we fast forward where I began exploring natural medicine, and we'll just touch on this, but I've talked about it before. I grew up with a lifetime of lung disease and asthma, bronchitis. I'm always coughing and wheezing, and my dad was a surgeon, so we had all the medical treatments and allergy shots and adrenaline when 2 o'clock in the morning when I wake up, couldn't breathe, and masks to mow the lawn and all this crazy crap. And I just got tired of it. When I got into my 20s, I'm like, I hate this medicine. I don't like this feeling. I just, there's got to be some other way. And we found this book and started reading it. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. There's medicine in plants. And this is before computers. This is before any of this. This is, no internet. It was books. And I discovered an old used bookstore, found some old herbal books, and began my journey to plant medicine. And over time, I think it was like 1989 or 90, I had a bit of a guru for a teacher for a year or so, and guided me a little bit in looking for things and finding answers. And I'm starting to grow medicinal herbs and learning to extract and starting to make tinctures and looking at all these old recipes. And I found this recipe for, it was for a arthritis liniment. It was a Mexican old remedy, and it was put a bunch of pot in some alcohol and soak it for a couple weeks, and then you can rub it on your skin and it'll take arthritis away. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I had been down to Mexico and we got some of this cognac alcohol, and I said, well, if we're going to use alcohol, we might as well use alcohol that's clean. Even as a kid, I always wanted things to be right. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. And everybody was doing isopropyl that I ever heard of, and that's even what they recommended. But I was like, no, let's just do that. And so when I made this stuff, it turned all green, and I'm like, all right, we're on to something here. And I remember I told this guy, I think I'm about ready. I think this stuff's about ready. And he says, well, did you try drinking it? And I was like, what? No, it's a liniment. He says, well, what'd you make it out of? I says, well, I made it out of this cognac alcohol. He says, well, why don't you bring some over? Let's try and see what happens. So that was my first experiment. That was the first whisper of the plant to say, hey, I'm medicine. And we poured a shot. I actually took off work at lunch and ran over to this guy's apartment and poured a shot. We both had a shot. And I'm driving back to work, and I actually had to go help bid this job of this. It was a cosmetic manufacturer, and they were doing a high-tech polyurethane coating, and I knew how these coatings worked. And I remember walking up into this place, and all of a sudden it starts coming onto me in waves, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And that was the beginning of a legacy. I started to make these liqueurs that came off of this extract and overcame this horrible taste of all this chlorophyll with all these flavors and fruits. And it turned into a side quest. And one of the things that I have that goes, I think, for me is when I get on a mission to learn something, I go all in, and I'm so excited about it. I can't stop thinking about it, and I think about it in my sleep. And so for a while, I was so obsessed with these tinctures. Over a year, I was making them, aging them, making recipes, collecting exotic fruits and spices, and I created this amazing legacy. And anybody who remembers from back in those days, with what I know today, I know that I could make something that nobody's making right now. But I don't have a good relationship with alcohol, and I can't, because of this cancer I have right now, I can't have any alcohol. So maybe that's a thing that'll never come back to life. But I'm going to close this episode on this note. I had a roommate who had an aunt who was suffering from cancer. That was really probably my first experience with cancer. And as I was reading all these books, I started learning about the little knowledge back then that they had, that cannabis can be valuable in this. And at least it could help with nausea and appetite and all that. And I remember my buddy telling me, my aunt is dying, and she's going through this chemo, and she can't eat, she can't sleep. And is there anything you can do? And by that time, I was like the local witch doctor. I was making all kinds of potions, and all the neighbors would come around. Hey, I've got this thing. Can you help me? And I'd make a thing. And and it worked enough times that people came back. And it worked enough times where I was like, all right, I'm onto something. I don't know what I'm doing, but I keep trying. And I would always try it on me first, just in case something went wrong. And if it didn't hurt me, I was like, well, this is what's happened. This is what I know. And then we started collecting anecdotal data. And I remember this first lady that I gave a little jar of this tincture to. And by this time, I had it sweetened up so it tasted okay. And I remember months later, my buddy gives me this card that she had written to me and just thanked me and blessed me and prayed for me. She says, "You've helped make my life more bearable." And that's when I knew I was onto something. And this plant that I was out hiking in the mountains and spending all this time growing, and I was risking my life at that time because it was totally illegal. We didn't have any medical laws, so everything I did had to be super hush-hush. And I knew every time I went out there that if I got caught, I was toast. And I was willing to make that risk back then, and that was the beginning of some substantial more risks. And we'll be talking about this. It's going to probably take a couple episodes to get through. But this takes you to where I began an awareness that this was powerful medicine. And we'll get into my advocacy work and the risks and the beautiful medicines that we've made and the people we've helped. And then the truth about it all and the people that I've been working with and really the truth about it all. So be a couple more episodes getting you through. I really thank everybody for the support. If you want to support this podcast, there's a way to subscribe and get some better content. Look up Gardens of Hope. There's a lot of good work we're doing through that. Therapeutic horticulture, and it's all connected. We're building a community based on health, and that's the healthy living. So, all right, thanks for all your support. We'll see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right, well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.